You are with the big story here with us at 2 p.m. I'm Seher Zama. In the top focus, concerns regarding the state of the economy. The raging economic slowdown debate across the country. Adding to that is L&T Chairperson Mr. AM Naik. He's added to the chorus here to that concern, saying that India's economy is witnessing a slowdown and it's not going to be taking less than 1.5 years before accelerated growth actually starts. Adding to that, he said that the private sector is going through a challenging time because it is not able to invest because of the stress in the economy. The question that we are asking, given the larger concern in various senior industry voices having spoken out here on this as well, is the government listening?
I think it is going to take a year and a half before the accelerated spending for development will come. The growth is going to be not more than 6.5%. America is keen to bring the industry back to America, or concentration of American dependence on China, they want to reduce, from what I hear. Now, number of industry has shifted to Vietnam, Thailand. Why has it not shifted to India? You should have a special desk and in one go clear all the investment parameters or all the permissions.
In fact, Mr. AM Naik there becomes the second high-profile business person after Rahul Bajaj, who's the chairperson of Bajaj Auto, to have hit out at the government. Not just a warning sign, but hitting out at the government for its inability to kickstart growth. Rahul Bajaj had also criticized the government for being in denial about growth prospects. I'm going to throw this open to our panelists this afternoon with us in just a bit. First, quickly going across to our news editor, Avni Raja, getting us those details here. Avni, we're looking at now a string of senior voices from the industry speaking out, saying that the government needs to wake up, needs to smell the coffee, needs to see the signs to be acting with immediate effect.
Absolutely, Seher. In fact, let's just put this in a little bit of perspective here. The warning sign started months ago when we saw the IIP numbers, that's the Index of Industrial Production, start getting hit. We saw the vehicle sales numbers, not just that, we saw even things like two-wheeler sales numbers getting hit. So the warning signs had started coming in a while back. The question now is not whether or not we are in a slowdown, but the question is how bad is the situation now and how long is it going to take to recover, like Mr. Naik was pointing out, that this might see a prolonged recovery, a prolonged slowdown, which means the recovery might take that much more time. And what is being done now to ensure that this doesn't do any long-term damage and we are able to get back on our growth path soon? So that really is the big question, Seher, which I hope the panelists that you have will be able to answer today.
Right. Avni, many thanks. In fact, let's put across that concern here. Introducing our panelists with us this afternoon, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, leader with the BJP, also Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, senior economist with us. All right, before that, quickly switching focus to other breaking news coming in. This is with respect to the hearing which was on in the Supreme Court regarding the mediation, the Supreme Court monitored mediation, which has failed to bring about a solution in the Ayodhya land dispute. So the Supreme Court is to hear the Ayodhya case from the 6th of August onwards. These are breaking inputs coming in on the next step. Deputy News Editor Meenakshi Bhanja getting us those details here. Meenakshi, August 6th onwards, is this now going to be a daily hearing by the Supreme Court?
Well, yes, absolutely, sir. The big news, the much-awaited hearing in the Ayodhya title dispute case just commenced at around 2 p.m. and it as soon as the bench assembled, they started passing orders, and the orders are as follows. Number one, the Ayodhya mediation has failed, Seher. And secondly, because the mediation process has failed, therefore, the matter has to be adjudicated upon by the Supreme Court of India. And the Supreme Court has gone ahead and fixed August 6th as the date for commencement of day-to-day hearing in this hotly contentious, prickly subject.
That's right. And given the fact, of course, that the period of mediation was a considerable amount of time, the Supreme Court there, Meenakshi, having decided not to extend that anymore and instead would be hearing the case on a daily basis now. We'll have to leave it at that. We, in fact, are going back now to our discussion. This is regarding concerns of the slowdown in the economy, which has been expressed by several senior voices and businessmen there. Let's, in fact, get in a view. First to you, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, leader of the BJP here with us. Mr. Ghosh, are you in agreement with these views, these observations which are being expressed? And it would be a given that because they're industry experts here, this would be the real concern, being close to ground reality.
First of all, let me tell you one thing. I strongly oppose this kind of hoax which has been spread by the opposition, that slowdown of economy in 2018-19. To my support, let me give you a couple of figures which will show the performance of the governments and the status of the economy as on date. The GDP is about 7% in 2018-2019. Is the third largest startup base of 4,750 tech startups. Labor force has increased up to 160 to 170 million by 2020, the study of the ASSOCHAM. Indian foreign exchange reserve is up to 405.64 billion up to March 15, 2019. The M&A activity in India reached the record high of 129.4 billion US. The PE and the venture capital investment reached up to $20.5 billion. And 2018-19, the merchandise export increases to 8.85% up to $298.47 billion. The service exports have grown 8.54%, year-to-year basis is up to $185.54 billion. See the government performance also. The net direct tax collection 2018-19 crossed $144.57 billion, almost $10 trillion rupees by March 16, 2019.
Okay.
GST collection has stood by $10.7 trillion, and that is equivalent to $144.5 billion, 7 trillion rupees. As of February
but
2019.
Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, is that connecting to the concerns here? Because these are concerns with respect to indicators, with respect to figures that you're not looking at.
Let me conclude.
Okay, please conclude, because you are overlooking figures that have come in of 8 core sectors which have witnessed a slowdown in a dip by 0.2%. Okay.
No, I don't understand one thing. I am not understanding one thing. Instead of all round development in figures, published figures by the credible authorities, right? IPO has increased. Consumer price index inflation has stood for 2.57% in 2019. Net employment generation of the country reached 17 months high in January 2019. So, from which angle? From the performance of the government?
Let's in fact get in a response here from Mr. Mohan Guruswamy here with us as well. So let's get in a response on these figures that you've quoted here. Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, these are figures to justify that there is no slowdown. Also, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, these voices who have expressed concern that the growth rate will perhaps not be maintained at 7% are not voices from the opposition. These are industry leaders. Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, please respond.
I think, I'm quite amazed at the kind of figures he's throwing. I don't suppose they know what they're talking about, because when, I've got crystal figures in front of me, when this government came into power in 2014, economic growth rate was 6.4% after adding that 2.2% pad-up they did. It is today 5.8%. You take out that 2.2, it's actually 3.6. That's the kind of figure Arvind Subramaniam, their chief economic advisor, is talking about now. There have been 3 crises since 2016. One was demonetization, a huge slowdown of the economy, contraction of demand, huge unemployment, people went back. And so you can see the unemployment by the drop in rural wages. Rural wages, which is growing at 28%, in 2014 has come down to 3.7%. What's happening is oversupply of labor
That's right. But,
in
but, but
rural areas.
Mr. Mohan
Then you've got
Guruswamy, in the argument here
GST
that is
slowed
being
down
added by Mr.
exports.
Bhaskar Ghosh, saying that these are growth figures that we are getting from valid authorities who are licensed to be giving out these figures. These are growth
Like
figures coming in from the government here as well.
ASSOCHAM
So
has
where
got,
is this concern coming
ASSOCHAM
from?
has
That
got
is
4
also a
people in
question
it.
being...
And no research No. You can quote, you can quote figures from people who don't have any research capabilities.
Mr. Guruswamy,
ASSOCHAM has no research capability. The government is
very...
very...
Mr.
Listen
Bhaskar
to me.
Ghosh, if you could take into account, this is where the argument rests here, that because the government is so much in denial,
I know.
industry leaders are forced to speak out and express their concern, and the government continues to be in denial. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh,
absolutely.
if you could take into account industry leaders, industry voices speaking in this manner, why do you think they would be speaking out? These are apolitical. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, please understand, these are not voices of the opposition. These are apolitical voices. These are voices coming in from the industry.
Sahar Zaman, recently you have seen 62 numbers of... I can't hear you. 62 numbers of the intellectual has written letter to Prime Minister about the intolerance. I do not know. If you see the total expenditure in 1920...
Don't mix up issues.
2019-20, the total expenditure budgeted
is about... You're trying to put tolerance and expenditure on the same plane.
Don't mix up issues.
The selective people give a selective remarks. Sir Zaman, I'm talking in statistics which is published in very authenticate report of the CII and all the credible authorities.
But what vested interest could industrialists have here in painting a grim picture? They're looking at their own losses here.
I'm answering. I'm answering.
Rahul Bajaj said it, AM Naik said it. What else do you want?
That is, I cannot justify on their management why they're making losses.
They're industry
why
leaders.
Why they're making losses, I cannot I cannot really comment on their losses. But I can comment on what
the automotive industry
government
expenditure.
All right. Allow me to speak. This is where it stands. This is where the government would stand here on this, because I believe you're speaking on behalf of the ruling party, the BJP here, saying that individual industry losses are not the government's concern. Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that. Appreciate you much being with us, but we have to quickly switch focus to that other big news of the day. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, please stay on with us. This is regarding the development that came in earlier today in the Rajya Sabha after a heated debate regarding the UAPA Amendment Bill, which has now been passed in the upper house of parliament as well. It's passed now both in the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha. It's just waiting now to be signed into law by the president. This bill has given the government the power to designate individuals as terrorists. And this was the larger concern that was being expressed by the opposition in the Lok Sabha discussion earlier in the week as well as in the Rajya Sabha today here. There was a demand that it be sent back to the select committee, which was turned down, which did not have the numbers to support that. And today we witnessed the passing of the UAPA Amendment Bill in the Rajya Sabha as well. We have with us Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, leader of the BJP, also Mr. Kamal Mitra Chinoy, political analyst here with us as well. Mr. Kamal Mitra Chinoy, in your view, this was the same concern that was raised by leaders in the Rajya Sabha today as well. The government was refusing to take that into account, and we had our Union Home Minister very specifically indicate if the concern here is that an individual, that this bill gives, this law gives the power to the government to designate an individual as a terrorist. The assurance from the Union Home Minister here coming in that there is going to be a rigorous process before an individual is designated as a terrorist. So are you in fact satisfied with that assurance that has come in today?
I think, there has been a loss of historical memory in this country. This is about the 7th or 8th Anti-Terrorist Act. There was earlier MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act. There was POTA, POTA. That was, again, a Terrorism Act, Prevention of Terrorism Act. Then there was UPA, which is closer to this act. Then there were a series of other acts So when you have about 7 or 8 acts that have been put into play in the political system, what is the need for now focusing one person as a terrorist? The whole idea of all the Indian acts has been that there are terrorist groups and terrorist combines. This saying that one person is a terrorist also implies that only that one person can do terror, where we know all terrorist acts have been functioned by some groups of people. So I think it's a very bad attitude of the government to focus on one people, because that is what they've done before. And the last point I want to make is the government now going to take action on
before I get a
against their
response
own
from Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh,
person,
Mr.
Sanjay?
Chinoy,
Now
is it about
the
not
woman has been damaged.
Mr.
And it's
Professor
not only about
Chinoy,
one person.
Is it about not realizing that even the kind of terror attacks that we're looking at now has perhaps changed down the years? There have been lone wolf attacks, there have been lone wolf operators as well, and perhaps this amendment would take that into account then.
If it was lone wolf, it wouldn't matter. But please remember that, for example, in Punjab, where the troubles were there were true anti-terrorist acts in...
Right. All right, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, please respond. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, the concern here being that after an individual is designated as a terrorist...
Mr. Shenoy, allow me to respond. We have listened to you a lot.
It becomes entirely for the individual to prove here otherwise. Yes, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, please go ahead.
Now, so today there were 3 primary amendments was there regarding approval of seizure of property by NIA, investigation by NIA, and insertion of schedule of treaties. Now, today the problem of terrorism is not restricted to India or Bangladesh or Pakistan. It is remotely controlled from different countries of the world. It is remotely controlled from Syria, it is remotely controlled from Iraq, it is remotely controlled from Iran. So now there is a need of NIA's investigation freedom and investigation ambit to be widened. Number 2, what Mr. Shenoy is telling, let me tell you, that because of we cannot pin down an individual like Hafiz Saeed, even the UN is individually pinpointing a terrorist, Hafiz Saeed, and banning him. So in India, most of the terrorists, they are related to some organizations, but we have no authority till date, whatever law was existing, to individually accuse them and bar them.
The details in this amendment still do not specify here that once if an individual is designated as a terrorist, what is that rigorous process? Is what was mentioned by the Union Home Minister as well. So what is that rigorous process here? Because the concerns by the opposition were that people who are speaking out against the government are being tagged as urban Naxals and anti-nationals.
Ma'am, I'm informing you, before designating a terrorist individually, there are several steps.
What are these steps here? That's my question, sir.
Yeah, these steps is that number 1, any person when they identify as individual terrorist, they have to take approval from different authorities, and once they have been identified, they have got 3 tier of relief. 3 tier of relief could be given to them by judiciary. Quasi-judiciary process has to be also be started before identifying them as an individual terrorist. So there are enough of option left for the accused to defend himself in different forum if it is wrongly done.
Mr. Ghosh, please tell us how many terrorists were attacked in 2002 under Modi. Please give us a concrete example of how
Professor Chinoy, the concern here...
focused in 2002 in Gujarat.
Professor Chinnoy, the
You cannot
argument
bring
here,
in terrorism
Professor
without
Chinnoy,
an
please listen to the
overall
question here.
structure
The
of
argument that the
policy
opposition,
and the way
the
people think.
argument by the opposition that this is yet another new form of an anti-terror law that could be misused, which has happened in the past as well. But should that stop the country? Should that stop the country from amending and changing anti-terror laws
No,
with
it should
respect to
stop
the
the
changing
country
scene?
if it's a wrong
Professor
law.
Chinnoy.
But if it is an anti-terrorist law which is with the judiciary and constitutional principles, it's fine. But you cannot make a law without those judicial principles and constitutional principles. We have no problem with an anti-terror law. There have been dozens before this. Well, the law is meant by the majority in the opposition and in the treasury. So then the decision comes. You control the parliament and therefore you make your own decisions about what is law and what is judiciary.
Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, please respond here to this. Of course, the allegation that continues against the opposition that in what we've seen in this particular session that several times the opposition has it's raised its apprehensions on certain amendments and bills in this session, asking for it to be sent back to the standing committee, which has entirely been refused. The government refuses to take into account valid concerns of the opposition.
But tell me one thing. When there was voting of triple talaq, 36 members was abstained from the voting. In Rajya Sabha, we are not in majority, but still we are getting the support of the majority.
Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, you're again deflecting. My question was very specific on concerns that are raised by the opposition. The government refuses to take those into account. There are very specific concerns of what we've seen of how people only in expressing an opinion against the government are called urban Naxals. They are activists. They're still in jail. They're called anti-nationals. This is the concern that the UAPA amendment law now would give a handle to the government to act against them and designate them as terrorists, even if it's just an opinion against the government.
That's what exactly Shahar Zaman, that exactly what I'm telling. It is not only the government will be responsible for designating them as an terrorist. There will be quasi-judicial process. There will be judiciary involved. And those people behind the bar, urban Naxals, they are in the hands of judiciary. They are in the hands of judiciary.
Number one, a number of the so-called urban Naxals have been released.
Professor Chinnoy, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that. We will, of course, move ahead in good trust here that this bill would most certainly signed into law by the President of India and be used to rein in terror. And the apprehensions of the opposition would be taken into account as well. It will not be misused. It will indeed be used to fight the menace of terror in India. We'll have to leave it at that. Thank you for being here.